You here today, and so we're getting a thumbs up. Is that right? So everyone can hear me. And here again, we want to do just a little sound check. If it's a little bit echoey or too loud or distorting, just let us know that, and we can make our adjustment for that because we can't hear what it sounds like. We think we got it pretty close though. So I'd like to welcome everyone back for another session. And we're kind of continuing on the theme that we've been on. And if I remember correctly, we've been having a series every Sabbath for the last, now this would be the 10th week. And we've been trying to help people understand that we've got a time coming that we need to prepare for, not just spiritually. Sometimes I kind of overlook stating that, but in a sense, in my mind, that goes without saying, but obviously I need to say that just so everyone knows that I'm not just prepping. Prepping is good, but it needs to be in perspective. So we're going to be looking at prepping today in a spiritual sense and in a physical sense. So I'm glad you joined in for this. And we're going to hit the go button here right away. But before we do that, let's have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you. We come before you again on your holy Shabbat that we can enjoy your presence. You have told us that you will meet with us on your holy times. And Father, we're inviting you into our presence. We give you full permission to speak to our minds, to work through our conscience. Father, direct us in your ways. We want you to do this. We ask you to do this. And today, as we're going to be looking into some practical things of what that means, the time that we're living in. What does that mean to us? We pray you guide us. We ask these things in Yeshua's name. Amen. So if you were with us last, I believe it was Wednesday, we had some technical issues. We understand up by St. Louis, so what we're told is somebody hit a fiber optic cable and sort of put us out of commission, and so we had to start again. So we're doing a reboot here. Some of these slides we've gone through briefly. I think we only got about half a dozen, so we'll just do a restart here and get all the, hopefully we won't have any trouble here, and we'll be able to continue. So we are looking at the idea of community living. Just to preface this, the things that we're teaching people, the prophetic insights, if you will, that are telling us that we're going to be going into a time of trouble such as never was. These are the words of Yeshua himself, Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, along with the book of Daniel and Revelation. When you combine all of those things, they're a pretty comprehensive view of the time of the end, the time up until the second coming of Yeshua. Now, there's a lot of discussion of what's going to happen after he comes, but I just want to be in the right position when he arrives, and I believe that's why he told us what would be happening up until that time. And so we're warning people is Babylon's about to take control of the world again. This time it'll be a spiritual Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar won't be here, but in spirit he will be here. And he will take all nations captive. And we believe that that little parallel we have from the book of Daniel, there's so many things in there that relate to our situation that we have brewing in the world in these last month or month and a half is really indicating where we are going in time. So we've had lockdowns, we've had curfews, as it were, gatherings no more than 10, and so on. Wherever you are, it's a little bit different in the world. I understand the Prime Minister of Australia said that no more than 2 in a public gathering, and I found that quite interesting. However, what we have seen is the governments will take full control if they deem it necessary. And this is where we're going. So we don't want to be a part of that system. We're encouraging people to get away from the larger centers where you don't have that close contact with people because we are going to be having pestilence and so on. And we're going to go through this, kind of unpack this and show you what we're doing. And just a how would I say it? Maybe a premise, or just to let you know ahead of time. This presentation is not an advertisement so that we can have a whole bunch of people coming to Camp to Meet. This is not what this is at all. What we're trying to do as a ministry is we're trying to encourage places like this all over the place. First of all, in Canada, where we live, in the United States, where we do a lot of ministry work, we are encouraging people all over the place to set up these, I call them arks, or cities of refuge. They were called in the Old Testament, a place where people could go and they would be safe. And this is what we're looking to try and encourage people to do. Certainly, if everyone decided to come to Camp to Meet, I don't think we could handle that. But this is not what this is. This is not a sales pitch for what we're doing. We're not franchising this. This is an encouragement for wherever you are, get in contact with like-minded people so that you can do this where you are. Because somehow, if we're traveling around and we run into a problem, we will know, hey, there's a safe place that I can go in that direction or whatever. It's for a time that we're going into. We are preparing for a time that we're going into. We're not there yet. We're preparing for that time. So let's go through this, shall we? Community living. What does it look like? Well, that's a really nice little picture. Those are my two grandkids. And they're walking my dog and their dog. And they're just going through along the road inside the camps. Just gorgeous. Just a daily walk where they can walk in innocence, and they're safe from, the things that you might find in the city. Now, we also have to watch out for things like black bears, grizzly bears, cougars, and so on. And I was told, my mother asked me a question one time, aren't you scared of the animals up here? And I said, I'm a lot more scared of the two-legged animals downtown than I am of the four-legged animals up here. At least I know what the four-legged animals are going to do. So yeah, you have to be aware of your surroundings, but it's beautiful surroundings. And when you're in nature, you're more in tune, I find, with our Creator. So here's the question. Is community living for you? When we ask that question, I don't know what comes to your mind. Are you thinking of a community living like a gated community, like within a city, because they call that community living as well? Community living is a very wide spectrum of different things. So there's anything. You could have a tent community or whatever. But what we are is an end times community living. Now, end times community living is completely different. And I want to say this again, it's completely different than any other kind of community living. Now, I've talked to people that would like to have a Torah-based community and have believers live there, and we have everything in common and so on. That is not an end times community living. That's more like a commune. So I'm not saying that all Torah observant communities are communes, but we have everything from a proper, what is by definition a commune, and then maybe we might be at the other end of that spectrum of that. I'm not sure how wide that spectrum is, but it is very wide even within the Torah community. So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to share with you what we're doing, what is working for us, and the things that we've learned, things that don't work. And so we've learned a few lessons, and we want to share those as well, because you know what? I've always determined that if you're one that can learn the lessons that others had to learn, and you don't need to make those same mistakes, you're going to be further ahead faster. So part of what we're going to be sharing is some of the lessons that we've learned that may help you to bypass those ditches in the road, so to speak. So we are an end times community living, and we're going to have a little bit of a Bible study here. We're going to show you how we're structured and so on. But my belief is that just a regular community regular Torah-based community and a Torah-based end times community is vastly different. And I'm going to share with you as we go why I think so. So let's look at some text, shall we? Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads because your redemption draws near. Now here's the first point I want to make. If you do not believe, and when I talk about belief, I don't mean just belief. I mean your actions are matching your words. So in your actions, if you actually believe that your redemption is near, then it's time to look for an end times community. That would be reasonable. But if you do not believe that with your whole heart, then you're knocking on the door of the wrong place. You just want to be in a Torah-based community. And I say again, they are vastly different. And there's a reason for that. So if you don't believe that your redemption draws near, then don't go to an end times camp. You're not going to be happy there because the decisions that are made at that camp are based on the fact, and I say fact because I'm 100% based on that concept, is that we have arrived at the time of the end. Now, prophets have spoken of this time. They've dreamed of this time. They would have longed to be in this time. In fact, some of them thought they were at this time. Well, guess what, folks? We've arrived. We've arrived at the spot where they were all looking, the spot at the second coming of the Messiah. They didn't even understand, it looks like in Scripture, that there was even a second coming. It looks like it would just culminated in one coming, and the kingdom would be set up at that. But we've been looking in the book of Revelation and so on, and we've seen that it's not unfolding exactly the way some of the prophets thought. But when you put it all together, you can see that each prophet filled in a certain aspect. But clearly not one prophet saw the whole thing. Here at the end of time, we're putting all these parts together. And I've come to the conclusion, the people that live at the camp where we live are at the conclusion is that we've arrived. The time that the prophets have spoke about, they've arrived. If you have not come to that conclusion, I would highly recommend that you do not go to a, quotes, end times community living. Here again, the reason is because the decisions that are going to be made at that camp because of the time that we're living, or the time that the people that are overseeing believe that we're living, they will be making decisions and you will not be able to understand why they're making the decisions they are. Because they're looking at near coming, not 20 years, not 30 years, not 40 years, not 50 years down the road. Their decisions are based on the now, the here and now. All right, so we go through that. One of the reasons, and Yeshua, we've been talking about this in the last 8 or 9 weeks with the Daniel and Revelation series, is the main reason is because that we believe what we believe is the signs, the exact war that Yeshua spoke about that would start the last protracted time at the end, the actual measured time at the end, would be a war between Islam and primarily the West. The whole world will be involved, but it'll be a square off of these two great civilizations, Islam and Christianity. Israel will be right in the middle. These are the three sons of Abraham squaring off. All of their ideologies, when you look at them, and we're just covering this really brief today because I just want to give you an overview of the why. You've got Islam that has a apocalyptic view of them dominating the world at the end of time. Christianity believes that Yeshua is going to come back and rule on the earth. The Jews also believe that the Messiah will come back. It's irrelevant whether they believe that's Yeshua or not, but they believe that the time of the Messiah to come is near. So you've got all these three great religions, monotheistic religions, and you've got Judaism and Christianity that are united basically against Islam. So there's this square off, and we believe that this is Daniel 8, the war between the ram and the he-goat, the kings of Media Persia, and this power from the west comes across the surface of the whole earth. and it's not a pretty picture. This is one of the main reasons that we are where we are, because we all actually believe this. And this will start the time of trouble, which we believe is very near, probably within 1, 2, or 3 years. And people say, well, when's Yeshua coming back? It really doesn't matter. The time of trouble is within just a few years. If you don't do what you need to do now, before the time of trouble, you will not be able to do it during the time of trouble. The markets will go down. If you have anything you want to sell, you won't be able to sell it. Basically, you will be on your own, and you will have to become part of the system. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. So we believe at Camp Tamid that we are in the time of the end. I should rephrase that. We are about to enter that. It's that protracted time that begins with war. That's what Yeshua said. First sign that comes up, war, and then there'll be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes. He says, I believe that to be just natural disasters in general, hurricanes, typhoons, all of those things. So this is the time that we're knocking on the door. And there's a few verses we can look at with that. Luke 21, a few verses in there. Then he spoke to them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. So this is just a lesson in all the trees. When they are already budding, you see and know for yourselves that summer is now near. So we can tell. I walk outside today. We're in April, mid-April, and I can see the trees are starting to get leaves on them, and I can see the buds. I know that summer's approaching. We're going to go through this thing called spring, but summer's approaching, and then I know what happens when summer approaches. We start to get fruit forming on the trees, and we start to go into the fall, which is the harvest, and so on. So Yeshua based the plan of salvation and the sanctuary service. It's on a harvest system. And so we can look at nature when we're in touch with nature, and our Father knows this. When we get in touch with nature, we start to see some of these parables. They start to make a lot more sense even to us as we start to rely on our Father for our sustenance. Jeremiah 8:20 tells us, the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. We do not want to have to echo these words, so we want to be ready. This is what we want to do. Yeshua goes on to say, so you also, when you see these things happening, know that the kingdom of God is near. And I want to emphasize when you see these things. What things? These are the things that he said were in the prophecies, the things that he was unfolding. He just went through Matthew 24, Mark 13, and it's also recorded in Luke 21. So he gives all the signs of the time of the end. And then he said, when you see these things. So what things? The prophecies, obviously. So I talk to people, even people that I think should know better, and I tell them, we're going to put on a seminar. And Messianic community, believers in Torah, and so on. And they could care less about prophecy. I don't understand that. Yeshua was all about knowing what was going on in the world in the time of the end. Now, if he was all about having us know what was going on at the time of the end, you got to ask the question why. You just have to ask the question. Because if we didn't need to know that, then why did he tell us? What was the purpose? Well, we need to come to grips with that. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all things take place. What are all the things? All the things that he said in the prophecy, all the world events. Interestingly enough, as we've been going over in this Daniel and Revelation seminar, he pinpoints one prophet. He says, go back to Daniel. He quotes Daniel verbatim twice in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. And so that should be a hint to us, is that's a good place to start. Doesn't quote anyone else in there except for there. And then when we start to look at that and then start to chew on Revelation, we can see that those are the two books that we should really be focusing on first. So the reason why I bring that up is once we figure out which prophecies that he was speaking about, then it says when these things are taking place, when you see all these things taking place, know that it's near. So if it's not important to know when these things are taking place, here again, I ask the question, why did he even bother to show us? Why did he show up at Daniel's bed one day and said, Daniel, write this stuff down. It's not for you, it's for a generation at the end of the world. Why did he bother to do that if it's not necessary that we understand it? And I've had the other side look at it and say, well, I don't need to know what those prophecies are about because you know what? I'm getting raptured and it really doesn't matter. Well, you know what? I don't know whether you believe in the rapture or not, but I'm just going to ask, if you do believe in the rapture, then why don't you understand what these prophecies say so that you can maybe talk to your neighbor and tell him what he's going to have to go through, and maybe he should deem that maybe the rapture might be a better route? Any doctrine that even hints at the idea that today is not the day of salvation, i.e. rapture, then I would run from it. Because Paul tells us today is the salvation. We get one life to live, one life to choose. And that's really all there is to it. It goes on to say, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. So in other words, you can bank on Yeshua's words. But you know what I'm finding in way too many circles? Is everyone's talking about the Bible. Everyone's talking about the Bible, but they're not reading the red letters. It seems to me that when the disciples asked Yeshua, what are the signs of your coming and the end of the age? He told us what we needed to know. That's where we should go first. Anything that contradicts what he said about the time of the end should really be discarded. And there's reasons for that we just don't have time to get into today. Let's keep going. Yeshua goes on to say, but take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the cares of this life, that day come on you unexpectedly. And I think this is where we got to the other day. So let's unpack this one, shall we? And then we'll move forward. So he says, don't be weighed down with stuff. Number one is carousing. Sometimes it's serving, overeating, indulgence, all that kind of stuff. That's what he's talking about here. Because when we do those things, our brains become tired. We can't think properly. You start reading the Bible and in 5 minutes you're falling asleep. We need to try as best we can to keep our minds clear so that we can actually think, make good decisions, and so on. You don't want to be having drunkenness. What is drunkenness? Well, drunkenness has nothing to do with alcohol, right? Yeah, no, nobody wants to hear anything about that. So we won't even include that one. We'll throw that one right away. How about the cares of this life? Here's one that we really need to zero in on. The cares of this life. What are the cares of this life? The cares of this life are, maybe I got a mortgage and I have to work day and night, and my wife has to go to work day and night just to pay for the mortgage. What about I have so many kids, we're so strapped, we have nothing extra. At the end of the week, when Sabbath comes, we are so tired, we just get on the couch and get into lay activities. You ever heard of that? Lay activities? Yeah. We're actually, when we get into that position, we're not much good for anyone, not even ourselves, because we're actually killing ourselves with our lifestyle. So the cares of this life. It's interesting that Yeshua picks up on this in Matthew 13, which we're going to look at in a moment here. That day come upon you unexpectedly. In other words, the things that are holding us down keep us so busy that we have no time to figure out what's actually important. Maybe the time that we're living in, and so on. Maybe trying to figure out. First Peter tells us that the prophets searched diligently as to what was coming and the time it was coming. Who here on the other end of this can actually say they are searching diligently of what's coming and the timing of that. Because that's what the prophets, and Peter was holding these prophets up, saying that, is if it wasn't for the prophets that were begging God for information, that were constantly asking him how to understand what was written, what those prophets wrote before, we would not have the information that we have. We can thank our Father and his Spirit that we actually had a remnant all through history that were diligent students of the Word. Here at the end of time, at the time of the culmination of many, many prophecies, we should be wide awake. We should be searching God's Word like we have never searched it before. Our eternal life may depend on our understanding of what the Word says. So we do not want that day to come on us unexpectedly. Oh, here's quite a picture, isn't it? Now he who received this seed among the thorns is he who hears the word of God. So that's all of us. Here's the word of God. And the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. So here we go again. This is probably one of the problems, the challenges within the household of faith, is some people have made riches what they're focused on. In fact, it's come to the place where in some churches, the people that have the most gold, the most riches, are the ones that are running the show. I don't know if you've ever been in a church like that, but I certainly have been involved in fellowships, because it's believed that if you're blessed and you have a lot of money, then you are being blessed by God. You want to read what this says. This tells us that very thing. It says that the cares of this world, so the riches of this world, the things of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches. Those in the faith that have a lot of riches, they're deceived by the concept. Not all of them. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them are deceived into thinking, because they have this great wealth, that they're being blessed. Well, the devil has a way of blessing people that are doing his work. And I'm not saying that people have a lot of money. If people have a lot of money, they are not being blessed by our Father. Quite the contrary. It's just we need to look in the mirror and say, what are we doing with what we have? Because if you believe that you're living in the time of the end, are you planning on signing your bank account and your deeds in lands back to Yeshua when he arrives? Is this what you're planning? If you actually believe that you're living at the time of the end, I would say more than any other time in times past, is take those lands, those extra lands that you have, and take that extra maybe cash that you have, and help somebody build an ark of safety, or you yourself build an ark of safety for that time of trouble that's coming. You see, this is the difference for those that just talk about the time of the end and those that are actually living the time of the end. You see, when you live the time of the end, it affects every aspect of your life. Every aspect. It's not just talking, it's doing. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Take heed, watch, pray, for you do not know when the time is. Here again, we've talked about this one before. This is a proof text, if you will, of a time that nobody will ever know the day and the hour. That's actually not what it says. We need to understand what it does not say. It does not say, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, not the Son, and no one will ever know. That phrase is not in there, because certainly we can see that the Son is definitely going to know. He knows the cycle. He knows the festival cycle. This whole second coming event is built around the festival cycle. He's the one that's directly involved. He's the center stage of the festival cycle. He will know in advance when he's coming, because there is a day and an hour that the Father knows. He will reveal to the Son, and the Son may already know right now. So the fact of the matter is, if the Son will know ahead of time, And then that would, by default, mean that the angels would know ahead of time. And if the angels, by default, are going to know that it's ahead, then we will know. God's people will know, because this day will not take them unawares. And we can see this in the first coming. He came on time. He died on time. He rose on time. He poured out his Spirit on time. He's not going to change his schedule in midstream. He is coming on time. All the second coming types will be fulfilled, just as were the first coming types. No question. So this text is something that we need to understand. This is why when I mentioned Peter, they searched what was coming and the time it was coming. They were always wanting both, and the time is wrapped up in the festival calendar. We know that through history. It records that. For John truly baptized with water, but you shall be baptized with the Holy Spirit not many days from now. Now we're here. We've been celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and that is over now. We have come to the last day of counting the first Omer, and then every week after that, there's 7 weeks, 50 days from the day you brought in the first fruits, and we were doing that. And I was suggesting that this counting of the Omer is wrapped up in the beginning of the feast, which is ridding the house of leaven. So the first week of counting has just been done. What leaven have you put out of your life? This is a 7-week process where our Father is working on us to rid us of things, and it's milestones. Have you ever, has anyone ever done anything on the 1st of January? What do we call that? New Year's, help me out, Judy. What do we call that? New Year's resolution? Is that what we call those things? It's a new start. We get a new start at the beginning of the year. Well, the matter of the fact is, that's just a counterfeit of the festivals. It says that the first day of the first month of Nisan or Abib is the beginning of months for you. The Passover was a time to cleanse the house, to get everything, spring cleaning type of thing, and get rid of everything and make those New Year resolutions. That was this month. Biblically speaking, that's what the Feast of Unleavened is all about. It's a restart. It's a recommitment. It's, Father, what do you want me to deal with my life? We got a celebration here that we're having, cleaning the house of leaven for a whole week, and we just continue on counting the Omer, the 7-week progression to the Feast of Pentecost, where the Holy Spirit is poured out. We have made ready the vessel for the Holy Spirit to be poured out. It's just a beautiful teaching tool that we have. Acts 1:6, therefore when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom of Israel? This is when he's up on top of the Mount of Olives at his ascension, just before his ascension. They're saying, hey, we got this idea you're going away, but are you going to set up the kingdom before you go? You see, they were looking at the kingdom coming. They did not know. And so he said, are you going to do this at this time? That's the gospel, isn't it? The kingdom being set up. And he said to them, it is not for you to know the times of the seasons which the Father has put into his own authority. Here again, he said it's not for you. He's talking to the disciples. It's not for you to know the times and the seasons. Why? Because it was going to be a long ways down the road, and it probably wouldn't have helped them much to say that it was 2,000 years. And not only that, the question is, Yeshua just a little while before said he didn't know the day and the hour. So quite possibly when he said this, he still didn't know the day and the hour. He didn't know how long it would be. So he doesn't know. They don't know. It's not for them to know. And even if Yeshua did know, it would not help them at all to say that it's going to be another 2,000 years. Another 2,000 years before I return. And then it'll be another 1,000 years after that. And then the kingdom will be restored. All things will be made new. This would not have helped them in their conquest of taking the gospel to the world. No, it wouldn't help them at all. Goes on, but you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. You shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem in all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth. Now, they were witnesses in Jerusalem and in Samaria and Judea, and then they took the gospel to the end of the earth. Paul, in fact, said that he's preached the gospel to every creature. Now, that's not quite true, I don't think, but they made an effort to take the gospel as far as they could. But we here are now at the end of time. Yeshua said that when this gospel is preached in all the world, then the end will come. Then his second coming will come. Because everyone has to have an opportunity to either accept his kingdom and his ways or reject them. So this is what we're trying to do right now. And this is what we're trying to do as a ministry, as a camp ministry. We're going to get into that here shortly. Just trying to preface why we're doing what we're doing. Luke 17, another interesting thing. And as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be also in the days of the Son of Man. Now we look at these texts and we think, okay, they were doing all kinds of crazy things at that time. I happen to believe they were probably mixing DNA of animals, possibly even humans. I have no idea, but the wickedness was so bad that God saw fit that he had to put an end to this. Probably the worst possible things that are portrayed on TV are less than what they were doing back then. Otherwise, our Father would have put an end to it already. So we're heading to a time when the wickedness will be at its height. And this is what people are thinking of when they read this text. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it also in the days of the Son of Man. But I'm going to look at this text completely different here for a moment, because it has to do with why we're doing what we're doing. Let's go on here. And it says, and God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. Now just remember this. As in the days of Noah. Here we go. The end of all flesh. Did you get that? The end of all flesh has come before me. Is it possible that God is saying the likeness of the days of Noah, that the end of all flesh has come before him? Just a parallel. We don't want to rule out. Now that doesn't obviously mean all flesh, because we know there was 8 saved in the ark. So, but all the wicked people, that's what came before him. For the earth is filled with violence through them. Anyone watching any news lately? Looking around the world, the earth is definitely being filled with violence. Even here, where we think it's very peaceful, if we knew what happened behind closed doors and in some of these cities, it would scare us to death, and we'd probably move out of some of these cities immediately. It says, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will do what? I will destroy them from the earth, or with the earth. Now, obviously, we have to read this and understand this. He's not saying that he's going to destroy the earth at this time, but the earth was changed radically at his coming. In fact, the earth would not support life at the time of the flood. It was completely washed, if you will. And even if all the water was drained off it, it would have been an absolute disaster. Supporting life would have been very, very difficult without a remake. And so we know what Noah did. He was allowed to, at that point, change his diet and eat animals. There was no vegetation, basically. So Noah was allowed to change even what he ate at that time because of an emergency, and so on. But the point being that I'm trying to make here is the earth was violent, and God says, I have to destroy all flesh, except for a few, obviously. I will destroy them or with the earth. So the earth would have been radically changed at the time of Noah. So my point is as in the days of Noah, he has to destroy all flesh because it's been corrupted, and he's going to destroy the earth. Not out of existence, but it's going to look a lot different. And as we've been studying these prophecies, just the very destruction that comes on before he comes is going to be bad enough. It goes on to say, by faith Noah, being divinely warned of what we just spoke about, of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of what? Of the world? Does it say that? No, it doesn't say that. Of his household. Your number one priority is getting yourself straightened out. Wherever you are, whoever you are. Your number one priority is getting yourself straightened out, and then go after your family. This is what Noah was commanded to do. He was told to get his house in order and start building a boat. With godly fear, it says, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, not the world. It's almost a joke to think that Noah had a sign up on the side of the ark and said, everyone welcome. I don't know how many people, but I understand there was like possibly even billions of people. Well, that's ridiculous. It couldn't be that all the people were supposed to come onto the ark. What I'm suggesting here is the ark was built for Noah's family. That's what it says. The ark was built for Noah's family and all the animals, because it would seem that God knew in his foreknowledge that no one else was going to build a boat. So he had Noah build the boat big enough for the animals, because he wanted to carry the originals, at least some of the originals, into the next plan or next phase. So this is what's going on. But let's open this up just a little more carefully. Being divinely warned. Let's put some shoe leather on this for us. We have been divinely warned of what? Of destruction coming. What are you doing about it? What am I doing about it? Are we doing anything about it? Let's look at what Noah did. Things that had been not yet seen. We're talking 7 plagues. We're talking wars, famines, pestilence, all this stuff coming down all at one time. He says he moved with godly fear. How much godly fear are you moving with every step you take during the day? Is it with godly fear? Noah's steps were with godly fear. What did he do? It says he prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which, get this, this is amazing, by what? By building an ark, being warned of things coming. It was by what he did that condemned the world, because by what he did showed the world that he believed in the coming destruction. We have to look in the mirror and say, what are we doing? What are we doing? Are you actually getting your boots on and doing something about what we've been warned about? If you're one of those that have heard the warnings and say, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do. I can do whatever I want. As long as I'm Torah observant, as long as I got the right, I don't know if you can see this, as long as I got the right length of tzitzit on, I'm good to go. You know what? We've got to change our way of thinking. We really do. So it goes on to say, by which he condemned the world and became heir of righteousness, which is according to faith. It was what he did that gave him his salvation. It was his works that demonstrated his faith. And so often we don't think we have to do anything. Oh, friends, it's by what we do that shows our faith. What are we doing about what we know? And you shall take for yourself of all food that is eaten, and you shall gather it for yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them. Thus Noah did, according to how much? According to all that God commanded him. So he did. So let's break this one down. So God said, Noah, number one, I want you to build an ark for the saving of your household. And then, once you got that thing built, I want you guys to gather all the food that you eat, and you put it in there. And I'm going to tell you how much. We're going to fill all the storehouses in the ark, because our father obviously knew how long he was going to be on there. Told him how much food to put on the ark. And for the animals, So take food for you and the animals. And somehow it just rattles around in my brain as in the days of Noah. Why has our Father told us that we got 1260, 1290, and 1335? Could it be so we know how much food we need to take in the ark? Are you listening? Are you listening? Don't get caught up in the story that God's going to take care of you and there's nothing you have to do. If Noah relied on God to take him up in the air, let the flood come, forget about food, all of that. But our Father wanted to demonstrate what it meant to be obedient to him, to show faith in him. Do you actually believe his word? I bring this to you because if you don't believe that you need to prepare for this time of trouble, you do not want to be a part of an end times community. You don't. Because all of their decisions that they make are based on exactly what I've been telling you. Now that's okay. If you don't believe that, that's fine. It just means that an end times community might not be your choice. Now that doesn't mean that it might never be your choice. It just means that it's not your choice today because you won't understand why the decisions are being made that are being made. Let's keep going, shall we? And as in the days of Noah, so will it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until Noah entered the ark. We'll just stop it, end that sentence right there. So what that says to me is they were just living life as normal right up until the time that Noah entered the ark. Well, if I read the book of Revelation, it's not going to be life as normal right up until the time Yeshua comes. In fact, there's going to be 7 last plagues, there's going to be 7 trumpets, there's going to be utter destruction in the whole world. It's not going to be the same in that point. They're not going to be just doing this as if nothing's going on. There's going to be lots going on, and a lot of it's not going to be good. The point is, let's read that again. And it, as it was in the days of Noah, so will it also be in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark and did what? And destroyed them all. That's the likeness of the time of Noah. You see, when Yeshua comes back, and we've been studying this in the book of Daniel and Revelation and some of the minor prophets and Isaiah and so on, and we've been looking at this, when the Son of our Father roars from on high, it says that the dead will be from one end of the earth even unto the other. This is the similarity to the flood. There's only going to be 2 groups, those that get on the ark and those that don't. And those that don't will be destroyed. And we've been looking at this. I'm not going to get into the details on that. This is very clear between Revelation chapter 19 and Isaiah chapter 46. There are parallel chapters. You can stick them right on top of each other. Even goes into the millennium period in Isaiah chapter 24, which most people don't understand that, but it actually goes right in. You can just overlay both those chapters, and that is very clear. It says in Isaiah 26 or 24, I don't know, verse 10, somewhere in there, that there will be few men left. And we studied that. We talked about the 144,000. Those are the ones that are standing. Those are the only ones that are able to stand at the time when the Son of Man comes. There will be 2 groups of people. There will be the 144,000, and there will be the wicked. The rest of those that have died in Yeshua will be raised at that time and taken to the marriage supper of the Lamb at the Father's house. We went all through that, shown how Yeshua was teaching that at the Last Supper, very clear, and in the book of Revelation as well. So we know that that's what's going to be coming. The point being with this text is that unless you believe, there are only 2 groups in the time of the end, the righteous and the wicked will all be destroyed. If you don't believe that, then an end times community is not for you. because there's going to be special preparation that those that are making, and in this case, it's mostly spiritual. We're talking about ridding the house of all leaven. This is not an option. This has to be done. So in an end times community setting, we are helping each other overcome challenges. We're sharing with each other. We're helping each other prepare not only physically, but spiritually as well. If you don't believe that there is a separation, those that serve him and those that don't, then an end times community is not for you. Let's go on here to double down on this concept. Likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. The point is, he's bringing to the point is, as in the days of Noah, they were all destroyed. As in the days of Lot, they were all destroyed. As in the days of the Son of Man, all the wicked are destroyed. If you think, for whatever reason, that you get some kind of second chance when Yeshua comes back, then an end times community is not for you, because you will put off what you should do today until tomorrow. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. I'm trying to qualify the mindset that you have to be in an end times community. You see, an end times community is just not a place where people keep Torah. That's not what it is. It's people that keep Torah, but they believe in a mandate. They believe in a mandate. And this is really the bottom lines in all of this. What I would like to say, that if you do not believe that time is running out before Yeshua returns, then an end times community is not for you. Now, obviously, all the reverse of what I'm saying is, if you turn everything that I've said around, then an end times community is for you. So these are things that you've got to work out in your own mind, because a lot of people, they think, oh, well, it's just a place where everyone keeps Torah and so on. It's going to be really nice. That is what we strive to do at Camp to Me. In fact, what we're trying to do is have a camp that demonstrates the kingdom of heaven on earth. This is what we're trying to do. That's a very difficult task. Without the Spirit leading, you cannot do this. It will be an exercise in futility. But as the Spirit leads, when people come, when people visit, they should be able to leave the camp and say, it was like Yeshua was there. That's what we're trying to do at the camp, is have believers that represent the character of our Master. And this is really what it's all about. We're not trying to attract them to us. We're trying to attract them to Yeshua, so they will make their decision for eternity and be in his kingdom. So what we're trying to do as a ministry, what our focus is as a ministry, it's time to buckle up. It's time to put your spiritual seatbelt on so that you will not be shaken. And it's time to put your physical seatbelt on as well, so you will not be shaken in that regard as well. Revelation tells us, but the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, half a time from the presence of the serpent. Now, we can spiritualize this away, but I'm taking this literally. We've got a time period of a 3.5-year time period. Some people want to read this times and a half a time, or 1 festival cycle, which is a year, 2 festival cycles and a half a festival cycle. However you want to read this, it's really amounting to the same time. It's given to us in 3 different ways: 1,260 days, 42 months, and 3.5 years. And it's 7 times also in 3 different languages. So certainly this is one timetable, or one time frame, that is clearly set out in the prophecies, and I believe as Noah was told how much food to put in the ark, and I'm sure he calculated, Father, this is only going to last a year and 3 days. And so he would have known how long this would be lasting approximately. And so he knew how much, and the reason is because that's how long he would have to last. In the prophecies, we're told time periods so that we can know how long we're going to have to endure this, flying into the wilderness where there's this place to flee from the presence of the serpent. We've been looking at all those things. Not going to get into all of what that means right now. He was granted power to give breath. This is the second beast that comes up out of the earth. Highly recommend, again, if you haven't seen that Daniel and Revelation series, please view it. Spend the time. It will be well worth it. So there's this power, this earthly power that makes an image to the beast. It represents another system that the beast system has, that the image of the beast should both speak and causes many who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now, we can't be taken off of this world, but we can be hidden in this world. And that's why it says the woman flees into the wilderness. It's an area in the woods, if you will, and it's away from society. So we're not the center. We're not at the center stage, because the persecution will be against those that are trying to live in obedience. So if there's going to be persecution against those that are trying to live in obedience, you want to be away from where the persecution is going on, which will be in the cities or the populated areas. Now, this is a warning to you if you don't think you're going to need to leave the city. I know some people that are teaching that it doesn't matter, we don't need to leave the cities because we're going to get raptured. Well, you know what? If you're going to err on the side of caution. If there is no rapture and you're in the middle of the city, then you need to think about what position that you're putting not only yourself in, but your family in also. Think about that. So it says here that there's going to be some kind of death sentence on these people that will not worship the beast or the image. He causes all, both small, great, rich, poor, free, slave, that's everyone. And we see this, Revelation 19, we see this in Isaiah 26, those two chapters that you want to parallel, I keep talking about. It's the same thing here. And the reason why it's written like this, it could just say he causes all. But no, that's not enough. We need to know who all is. So it's rich and poor, free and slave. It's everyone except for a few, except for those few on the ark, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So here again, I just want to caution people in what you believe. If you believe that you can live in the city for as long as you want and you're just going to get raptured, well, if the rapture doesn't happen, which I'm going to tell you it's not going to. I'm just going to be that bold and say it's not going to. When it doesn't happen, what are you going to do? You see, what we say we will do in a time of crisis and what we actually do a lot of times is completely different. I found when I say I would never do something, I find it's not too long before I'm doing it. And it's just, why would we place ourselves and our families in a time of trouble before it's necessary? There's just no need for it. Goes on to say that he might buy or sell, except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So evidently the time is coming when we won't be able to buy or sell. So doesn't that tell you, it speaks to me and says, I want to be in a position where I don't need to buy and sell. Well, how are you going to do that? The last time I went to the grocery store, when I rang my groceries through, they asked for money. They wanted a Visa card or they wanted money. They want something back. Well, that's called buying. So apparently, according to the God's word, is I'm not going to be able to do that. So I have to then, if I'm going to take the warning, I have to get myself into a position where I'm not going to have to go to the grocery store. I'm not going to have to buy my things at the grocery store. I'm going to have to be a lot smarter about maybe preserving, planning, things like that. Maybe I might need a root cellar. So if you're not going to do anything and you're just going to leave this to the end and not do what Noah did and build his ark, and when the time of trouble comes, you'll just flee somewhere, well, what are you going to do for 3.5 years? Are you going to just eat what's in your backpack? You see, we need to prepare, and the reason why our Father told us how long is so that we need to know how long we need to prepare for. It's just that simple. This is not complicated. Yeshua said, pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as there has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. Here again, if you don't believe that we're about to enter this time, an end times community is not for you. And I want to say again, it's because the main reason is because you won't make the preparation you need to for this time, and you won't understand why the decisions are being made by the leadership of whatever camp that is, because they're focused on being ready in all aspects of life, spiritual and physical, for this time that's coming. There will be great tribulation. I want to focus in on that first part and pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on the Sabbath. So number one, everyone's going to take a flight. And the point being here, Yeshua says, don't wait till the last minute. In fact, he says, if it's the last minute, it just might be winter. You need to think about that one. Now, I think he's thinking northern hemisphere here for you that are in the southern hemisphere, those down in Australia, the land down under, as it were. You got to flip this around for you. So that would be summer if this was the case. But what he's saying is don't wait till the last minute. Pray that your flight be not at the last minute. This is what we need to do. So people say, well, what if I can't go? Well, you know what? Maybe you can't go right now. But what you need to do is every day, Father, help me to know when it's time to go. That needs to be our first prayer. Because what's right for me in this case may not be the same as for you. Now, I know lots of people, quite a few people, that are living in the city and they do a work in the city and they share the gospel in the city and they don't feel that conviction to leave the city. That's fine. That's totally fine. But my encouragement to them is, what are they doing about when they're going to need to leave the city? Are they actually doing anything about that time? If you find yourself that you cannot leave the city at this time, pray when the time is. So ask your Father in heaven and the Son, when is it time for me to leave? If it's not the time for you to leave now, if you're not getting an answer to that prayer, what I would suggest very strongly is find people of like mind in the city amongst those you fellowship with. And possibly one of those people will get an inkling that they need to get out. They know they've got a line on a piece of property or so on, and they will be able to purchase. Now, for you, if you can't outright purchase, gather with some people that maybe have a little bit of finances between them and purchase a tract of land where you could support 2, 3, 4, 5, half a dozen families or so on, whatever. They're all going to be a little bit different. But work together. This is not something that you can do alone for the things that we're going to need. We're going to need the help of a lot of people. And so what you need to do is number one, pray about when you should leave and be in contact with others that are thinking along this line as well. And unless those days be shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Here again, just talking of the enormity of the time. It won't be business as usual. Mark of the beast will be implemented. You won't be able to buy or sell. They'll be putting people to death. You want to get out of Babylon while you can. You want to get established outside of Babylon as soon as you can. If I'm reading the Torah right, in some cases you can't even harvest fruit until 3, 4, and 5 years on fruit trees. So you want to be able to have that. Those that get out into rural areas now and establish themselves in the time of trouble, they will live like kings and queens. There's no question about it. The sooner you do this, the better. Absolutely. The sooner you do this, you'll be just in a better position when everything breaks loose. Sensible people will see trouble coming and avoid it. But unthinking persons will walk right into it and regret it later. This is what I'm trying to help people understand is do not do nothing. Do not do nothing. In other words, do something about what you know and understand. Think about it. Unthinking people, they walk right into trouble and they regret it. Sensitive people see trouble coming. Yeshua said there's a time of trouble such there never has been. I wonder if this would qualify. I wonder if this statement would apply. Sensible people will see trouble coming and avoid it. Do everything you can. Revelation tells us what to do. It says, get out of Babylon. We know what happened when the Israelites got comfortable in Babylon. They didn't want to leave. We get to the time of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. We all know what happened. Those people that had that death decree and were saved out of it should never have been there. They should have been long since gone back to Israel. But people got comfortable. This is a preview. Somehow I don't think it's going to go as well for those people at the end as it did for those in Esther's time. We want to act on what we know today because it's coming. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth? The question is, as was Noah, built an ark for the saving of his household, those people at the end that knew these things coming, but turned their back on it, I wonder if that's going to be deemed as having faith when Yeshua returns. I just wonder. Those that do something about what they've been warned about are the ones that will have the faith that Noah had, and they did something about what he should have done. So here's the camp. Here's where we live. We're going to look at a few pictures now. And so this is the camp proper. This is, I want to put a street sign here, the street called Straight. Have you heard of that? There's a straight street that runs right down there horizontally. There's a little truck there with some logs on it. That's my truck full of logs. And so anyways, that's the camp proper. This was done by Derek Sproul. I don't know if any of you know him. He's an artist, does some great work. Great work as an artist. He sat up on the hill on the east side of the camp and he drew that picture and it was just gorgeous. This is a really nice, Derek, if you're out there, we thank you. I just love this picture of the camp. Well, here it is here. You can't see it, but this is the valley that you have to go up to get to the camp. The camp is way up there in the V. So that just gives you, we are getting further and further and further away from civilization up there. We are very remote. Well, if you have an air shot, this is the air shot. This was taken, probably in the late 70s, early 80s. That's the last century, just after these cabins were built, not too long afterwards. And so they cleared out the land. And there's about 14, I think it's 14 of these cabins. Some are a little bigger, some are smaller, generally around 500 square feet. So that's where we have, when we have feasts on site, people live in those, or they bring an RV or tent or any of that kind of stuff. So that's what we have at the camp. You'll see the river in the top of the view there, running through, little bridge across, and also on the other side there on what would look like the far side, the top side would be more of the property as well. Down in the bottom, I'll show you a little slide here. At the bottom of that picture, right in the center, you'll see a couple little ponds and a house. That's a generation station. There's a 40 kilowatt generator in there. There's a 10-inch pipe off the hill, runs about 3,000 feet up the hill into a pond, and it comes down there and generates power. However, it is not working right now, so I'll just throw this out there because I know there's a lot of people out there who would like to see us have some good power. If you've got an extra, $50,000 or $75,000 just hanging around, not doing anything, just send it our way, and we'll have that power up and running. But I say that as a joke, but these are the things that to do what we're doing takes finances. And we've done a lot of stuff. I'm not going to get into what we spent. The reason why I bring it up is these things, this preparation takes time, effort, finances, and a lot of sweat, and so on. It's a lot of work, but it's most enjoyable. I just love doing it when I'm up there. Most enjoyable because the reward is in the enjoying and just being able to walk around the place. So just a little heads up for people that are thinking about an end times scenario thing. You want to figure out what your needs are going to be, because you will have needs. And so you have to figure out, okay, what are your finances? What kind of position are your finances are going to be in? And this is why I encourage people to team up, to put a few different bank accounts maybe together so you can buy a piece of land and do the things that you're going to have to do. So it's definitely a team effort. This little picture here is our house of worship. That's down the right-hand corner, and that's where we have our fellowship and so on when we meet together. This here, I want to show you where that is. If you come up to the camp, that's where you're going to use the washroom. Just make sure you go on the right-hand side as you're viewing is the women, and left hand is the men. Yeah, you needed to know that, right? Anyways, there's so just to let you know, the reason why I bring that up again is you're going to have facilities. You might choose to just have outhouses, which is fine. This place had some washrooms in it. We did some renovations. I'm going to show you what we did. You'll notice that all of these places have shingle roofs. You can't really tell that, but they're wood shingle roofs. And they're all heated with wood stoves. Now, you put shingles on a roof and you heat with wood stoves, that's just not a good combination. So all of these roofs now have been changed to metal roofs. This one in the middle, the one with the red oval around it, this is our studio for our ministry. I say this because this is not a hideout where we're at. This is a ministry. So if you're going to be part of a group that is only looking to hide out for the time of trouble and not minister, not share the gospel, not do the mandate that we've been given, then I believe you will fail. Your primary focus needs to be ministry work. Now, whatever that means to you, not all ministries are created equal. It may be a ministry where you have people, let's just say, for example, street people. So you advertise in town, street people, come on up and we'll take all of you street people that live in whatever city and we'll house you, we'll feed you. And that might be your ministry. If that's your ministry, that's great. You might want to take all the people that are paroled out on weekends and you say, come on up, we're going to do this. So again, not all ministries are created equal. Our ministry is geared to share the gospel. There's other people that are doing those other things. Our ministry is to share the gospel. We do that by recording meetings, much like what you're seeing now. We will record it, put it up on the internet. Our ministry is primarily to get truth out to the world, which is what we're doing. And That's what we do. We also have feasts, time when people come, and people will come for the feast, whichever one it is, and they will camp. We'll have meetings and so on during that time. So that's kind of what our ministry is based around. The safety factor is actually a benefit to what we're doing. It's a place where we can safely minister through the time of trouble as long as we can. We're close enough to a city that if we have to get in and do ministry that way, we can do that as well. But we're far enough when all the trouble hits, there's going to be gas shortages and so on. I rather suspect that the governments won't be able to plow roads because everything's just going to be focused on trying to survive in the cities. These kind of places that are not too hard to get to now will become very difficult to get to. People say, well, wouldn't it be nice if there was a paved road all the way, because there's about 30 kilometers of not paved road? And I just say, no, I love it that it's not paved. It makes it so it's not Grand Central Station. This is something that you need. If you are looking at a piece of property and there's no water on it, just walk away. You don't even entertain it. You've got to be able to get good drinking water, whether you want to filter it or whatever. This creek runs year-round, runs right off the mountains. There's nobody that lives past here. The water that comes down through the camp is basically as good as you can get right off the mountains, snow-fed as well. And we live in a valley where it's all basically sub-irrigated. You could almost dig a well, 20 feet, and you've got as much water as you could ever use. So the reason why I bring that up is water is extremely, extremely important. If you don't have a good water source, then you don't have what you need. This is one of the families, Alan and his kids here. Tabitha, his wife, was taking the picture, but this is just up the way from where we live. Just a really nice waterfall, nice walk that they were on one day. And also another family here, Seb and Tasha and their kids, a little bit of an army of diligent workers here. We just love, I could just sit and watch these people work. It's just beautiful just being able to watch it. And they're all very handy. They're all very talented people, all these people that live here. I'm kind of, these are sort of my favorites, people that live up there. This is my son-in-law in the front, my daughter right behind, and my two grandkids. They're probably the best two grandkids on the entire planet, except there's two others that are tied with them. They're not at the camp, though. Hopefully one day. And that's the other camp family we have. So between my wife and I, Judy and myself, and these three families are the ones that live at the camp. And you see in the background, this is one of the cabins that they were fixing up. They lived in there, and they lived in there. Alicia and Brian, I hope I'm not giving away secrets, but they lived in there. And she's got some videos on Instagram. You might want to check those out. They carried water this year. Carried water from the creek that we looked at, had to chip away the ice now and again. But that was their bathing water, that was their drinking water, and so on. And they heated with wood heat and so on. And they had an outside outhouse that they had.
And those videos are on our website on the About Camp.
Okay, those videos, thank you. Those videos are on our website, endtimesprophecy.com. On the About page, that's right along the top, About Camp Tamid, and you'll find those on there. And we're going to start producing more of those because we want to start ministering to all the different ideas. And the purpose of these videos is that you can do this. You can actually do this. The things that we think we need, we can actually do without in a crisis situation. So it's adapting to what you have at your disposal. Here's some framework here that we're going to put together a greenhouse, because we do have a limited season up there for growing. So the things like tomatoes, cucumbers, maybe some squash and things like that, they would need to be under greenhouse in order to do well. We can grow the root crops and things like that. So that's going to change wherever you are. So you need to figure out the place that you're looking at. what can you grow there, and so on. So that's going to be very, very important for you. Here's just the, like I said, the street that I want to call straight. This is the main road, and these are just some cabins. Now, these are really old pictures. All those cabins have been changed. This is a picture of the new roof that was going on there, a new roof on a cabin that was going on there. So we've got some tin on there. Here again, wherever you're going to go, remember, whatever you're going to do, it all costs money. So there's nothing, we haven't found any building supplies where they're just letting stuff go out. So it does take finances to do this. But here again, as a team and getting coordinated helps a lot. Now, we're not practicing here distancing. That's not what we're practicing. These places that we're going to look at right here were so gross, rat infested, rodent infested, that we had to wear masks when we're cleaning it out. Now, here again, the reason why I'm showing you this is you might have to raise something from death, because some of these old places that have these old cabins, we had people say, oh, just light a match to them. But the structures were solid, so we took pressure washers to them, soap and bleach and all kinds of stuff, and we cleaned them out. And I'm going to show you some pictures of them here. Here's another one, another fellow here working in the bottom. And those are the toilets as we saw them in this washroom that I showed you. However, now it's quite a bit different. We've taken all of this stuff out and so on. This was our meeting hall. I want to take you, beautiful structure. It's got 6 sides in it, and the poles go up in the center. Some of you may have seen me doing a little speaking, sitting right in front of that pole. That's where that is. This was how this place was heated. Here again, not the safest. So we got rid of that, and what we did here is we put hot water heating and poured concrete on the floor, and we just changed the structure incredibly by doing that. Very comfortable. And we have an outdoor boiler. Now the fire's outside, and we heat several of the buildings, including the wash house, with the same way, with water lines in the floor. And it's just a beautiful system. Doesn't take very much power at all to run this. Eventually, if we can get that hydro up and running, or we can get the solar running to the extent where we won't need it, won't need fuel, because that's where you want to be too. And here again, this is a picture of that where we fellowship and so on. So we've got floor in there. It's just a totally different place. Here's a picture of the generator. That's an old generator there in the background. That's not working anymore. You can see the blue pipe coming off the center pipe. That center pipe goes up the hill about 3,000 feet, and then comes down into the blue generator. I understand the blue generator is still good. So all of this stuff, the piping needs repair. That's where we need the financing for the piping. Here is underneath where the wash house is. This is in the center area. That, I don't know if you can really tell what that is, but just in case you don't know what that is a rat condominium. That's what rat condominiums look like. That's insulation carried up into all those apple boxes, all those fruit type boxes, and they built little condos in each one, and this is what we were presented with. It was just a disaster and stunk really bad. But we cleaned all that up, took a pressure washer. That's what that area looks like. After we cleaned it up, we've put some shelves and so on in the meantime. But the reason, again, why I tell you this, it takes an enormous amount of work and commitment to do this. If you do not believe that you are in the end of time and everything depends on what you do now, you probably won't go to the extent of work that we did. Because if you don't believe you live in the end of time, why not just stay in the city? After all, it's a lot easier in the city. So it's very, very important. This is why I'm sharing this information with you. This is one of the old showers, those old steel showers that were full of rat gatherings and so on. We've got some new showers in there, and we've turned that into quite a nice washroom area. Here again, this is just what we were confronted with when we went in there. No one had looked after this for years and years and years, except for the rats and marmots and rodents of all types. And it was very hard to even walk in there. Well, we put a new bit of a plumbing system in there, some handiwork, and so we're turning this thing around. And get yourself a pressure washer if you have these kind of problems, because you want to get rid of as much of that as you can. This is yours truly. This was another spot, a nice lookout for a rat. It's had a nice little nest up there on a shelf. Could see what was going on. However, he was out of there. I still remember the day. It's as vivid as when I was there. There was an 1.5-inch water line running about 6.5 feet up in the air, just outside of my reach. And a rat ran along that water line, and I looked at him and I said, "Your days are numbered, pal." And his days were numbered. We got rid of, we actually have the rodent problem under control with the odd cat hanging around, and something that you need to stay on top of. But we have overcome that. Here's just a cabin, and here again, like I was saying, we needed to change those roofs and get some metal roofs on there for safety. This is a landing strip actually at the camp. I don't say that you need a landing strip, but it is kind of handy. I've been landed in and out of there. It's quite a nice option to have up there at the camp. Now we're going to get into some nuts and bolts of this thing. I've got a bunch more pictures I'll show you if we have time. We'll see how we'll get through this and see how many pictures we can look at. Ideas for types of end times communities. So, a seniors community. So you might want to, maybe you're sitting back there and you say you hate kids. Every time you hear a kid scream or yell or whatever, it just drives you nuts. So maybe you want to be in a seniors community. If you want to be an end time seniors community, I would highly recommend it not, because you need people that are physically fit to do the hard things. So seniors community, I think you can pretty much rule that out. As far as an end times community, you're going to have to be able to get along with people of all ages. How about just families? I just want to be in a family end times community. Well, that's good too, but I would like to include older people, because older people with gray hair sometimes are a little wiser than those that don't have any gray hair. So I would like to say that you need quite a variety. You need people that are physically fit. You need people that have gone through some of these things before, have a little life behind them, a little bit of wisdom. Sometimes they don't have to do things 3 or 4 times before they actually get it right. They've already done that in their past. So a lot of times they know how to do it right the first time. And that's how younger people can benefit when they listen to these older people. So couples community, I don't know how that's going to go for you. I like to have kids around myself. A commune community. So the word community and commune kind of go together, but a commune is something that we're going to look at here in a bit, because it's something you need to determine whether you want to be a part of, because what technically is a commune? This is what we need to understand. Ethnic-based communities, so you want to be somebody of your same background, so on. These are just different things you can do. Best friends-based community, I just want to be with my friends so I can go over to their house and we can watch movies all the time. You know what I'm saying. Retirement, empty nesters community, camp to meet ministry type community. So what I'm suggesting, if you're looking for an end times community, something like what we've done, you've got to be a ministry. Your focus has to be saving others instead of saving yourself. He who saves his life will, you finish it for me, lose it. That's what he said, not what I said. It was when I finally came to grips with the idea that I always wanted to be up in a remote place, to be safe and secure in the time of trouble. It wasn't until I had a complete paradigm shift in my brain that it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was, as it were, in one day. It was like, this is not about you. It's about others. It's not about saving your skin. It's about helping others save theirs. And not just saving their skin, but saving their eternal life. This is really what this is. And as a ministry, this is what we're trying to do, is to help others gain eternal life and have a place to ride out the storm that's coming. So what kind of a place you want to have? You might want a cabin, you might want a house, you might have an RV, and I would recommend if you're in a cold area, you get an RV that's certified for cold weather, because these ones that you just take trips on in the summer, they are not built for the weather of, especially where we are. They sweat like crazy, and they rot from the inside out. They're just not a good way to go. So you'd need to be careful if you're thinking an RV is the way to go, especially in cold climates. Might be fine down in California or Arizona, but I wouldn't do it up where we are. How about a yurt? Depending on the climate again, but even a yurt, you put a wood stove in the middle of a yurt, and families live in those in the winter. They actually will hold the heat. You're going to go through the wood, but they do hold the heat. Tiny home, a lot of people are going to tiny homes. This might work for a couple, has no kids type of thing. They will work. Atco trailer, they call them Atcos. I don't know what they have down here. They're those camp trailers that they just pull in and drop down and put offices or bunkhouses in them. Those are fine too. But there again, get one that's built for the type of weather that you're going to have. Multi-room complex, you can get the bigger ones, hall, and they can have rooms in them. So those could be like little apartments. We have one of those that has 4 little apartments in it. Those are fine, but there again, if you're going to have something like that, you're going to have a common place where people can make their food and so on. So all these things are what you need to figure out. Are you going to have people living in individual houses, individual washrooms, full facility in their houses or cabins? Are they going to have full kitchens? Are they going to have power? All of this needs to be determined and planned ahead of time. Canvas tent for the real rustic folk. Up where we are, you'd have to be real rustic and grow fur in the wintertime because it gets pretty cold. Why would you want to consider the option of living in an end times community? So let's look at a few reasons why we might want to do this. So that you do not have to go through the end times alone. It's nice to have a friend to lean on, isn't it? Yeah, nice to have a friend to lean on so you don't have to go through alone. That's a good reason. Fellowship, being around like-minded believers that look out for each other, that's a great reason that you'd want to be in just a Torah-keeping community. But an end times community, it starts to get a little more focused on some of this stuff. So like-minded, how are you planning? How's your root cellar? Is it full this year? All these things you're preparing for the long haul. So what are you doing? So it's a time where you can spend with others of like-mindedness. Spiritual supercharged, what does that mean? Accountability. Accountability is one of the things that's first and foremost with fellow believers. You know how people, if they're walking down the street, they live in town, they don't even know their neighbors down the street. They don't even know what their neighbors do for work or so on. But I want to tell you, if you live in a community, especially an end times community, you know your neighbors. You know a lot about your neighbors. You're not getting away with anything. So you're held to an accountability that you don't find in the city. This is one of the reasons that if you don't believe you're in an end times community, you're going to struggle with a lot of things. But because you believe of the nearness of time of Yeshua's return, a lot of the things that you would never put up with of your neighbors that don't believe the same as you, you will put up with some of it, and you will work out the challenges that you have because of your belief system. Your belief system on even the end of time is extremely important when you live in community with people. Affordability. If land is leased or owned, tenants can enjoy more amenities than they could afford on their own. So if a group of people go in together, they can build like smaller houses that they can afford, and maybe they can build sort of a common place where you can have a fellowship hall and so on. So there's different things you need to entertain. It's not just a matter we're going to buy a piece of property, we're all going to live there, and hopefully at the end of the day we'll end up with cabins and so on. There has to be a plan made. I would say a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan, and then try to figure out how you're going to meet those goals and then go after it. Sitting around won't get any goals accomplished. Why would you want to consider? Here again, some more options. Access to main facilities, meetings rooms, wash houses, kitchens, grounds, etc. So if you build a house, you're not going to have septic fields maybe. Maybe you're just going to have one septic field, common washroom area. That's kind of what we have where our cabins are. But people that are starting to build elsewhere on the property, they're a little bit further away, so they can't tie into those systems. They're probably either going to put their own septic fields in, their own wells, and so on, or outhouse, or so on. So you got to make a plan. What are your needs? What are you going to settle for? All these things have to be thought out ahead of time. Access to skillful people. You have the opportunity to hire your own neighbor for tasks you cannot complete on your own. This is what a lot of people get confused on, is they think that everyone should just work for nothing. And well, this isn't the case, because until we get to the place where our needs are nothing, then there's no reason why we should be working for nothing, because I need to still buy groceries, I still need to buy things. So the Bible teaches that a worker is worthy of his hire. In other words, you should pay for somebody for services rendered. It's not a problem. If you have a problem with that, then you need to go to a place where that's the way the structure is. And like I say, they're not all equal. Some places will be like that. Food depending on the type of community gardens, and kitchens. So you might have a place where, in our case, we have 4 different families. Each family is encouraged to have their own garden for the things they need on a regular basis. However, we do have a large garden, fenced area, that things like if somebody wanted to put in a whole bunch of potatoes, and then say the 4 families just wanted to have that for a potato patch, so they don't have to have that at their house. There's that kind of opportunity as well. So those are all things. Okay, how are we going to structure the gardens? Are we going to have one big garden that everyone goes down? Well, what about the guy that doesn't like gardening and he'd rather do something else, and so on? So you have to sort of how you're going to deal with all these challenges that are going to come, because they will come. Possible options for childcare or senior care depending on type of community. So there's a chance if you have older people, they might have to be cared for. Is there a nurse on the property? Is somebody that knows anything about medical or any kind of that care? How about young children? If you have young children, the parents have to go off the camp to work. This is a situation we have a little bit. Then one of the teenagers or one of the other people will help take care of some of the kids. Okay, our mission statement. This will give you a little bit of a focus of what our mission statement is. The mission of Camp to Meet is to minister to the world about the need to prepare for the second coming of Yeshua, both spiritually and physically. And I mean, that's just boiled down to its simplest form that we could get. It'd be nice to have just 5 words, but this covers both spiritual preparation and physical preparation. And it's based off of this: go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And teaching them to observe all things. This is the ministry aspect. This is what our ministry is based on, teaching them to observe all things. And lo, the promise is, if you're doing what I ask you to do, I will be with you always. You see, there's a condition there attached. This is why I'm saying, if you're just doing this to hide out, I'm not sure you're going to get all the promises that go along with that. You don't want to shortcut any of that. What's a commune? The definition of a commune: an intentional community of people living together, sharing common interests, having common values and beliefs, as well as shared property, possessions, resources, and in some communes, work, income, or assets. So this really what it's saying is a commune in its proper or defined state is everything is shared. This is not what camp to meet is. And people say, well, why not? Why isn't it? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Well, let's look at this. Some aspects of a commune are similar to what we are doing. However, by this definition, we are not a commune in that we do not have shared property. There is a 280-acre parcel of property, so we do share that, but we're not sharing houses, and some of them aren't sharing their washrooms because they have their own washroom facilities and so on. So each individual family is taking care of their own family needs. So in that sense, it's not technically a commune. We do not share our possessions. So in other words, I've got all my tools out there that I used to use for electrical, and I've got some nice tools that I used to use, but those tools are not fair game for everyone to use, because I know from past experiences I'd be buying new tools every couple of years, but and I can't afford to do that. So everyone is responsible. Now that doesn't mean there isn't a tool that goes out and is not borrowed, but what it does mean is there's not a shop that I've put all my tools up there, all my specialty tools, and everyone has fair use of them. That is not what we have at the camp. Our resources, so the income that I have, I don't just put it into a pot, and people that don't have any income, they just don't take it, and so on. So, and the assets, whatever assets I have, are not what the assets of what everyone else has. We don't run like that. You see, the Bible actually is not built on that concept. You can read from Genesis to Revelation. There's only a couple verses that indicate otherwise. And we're going to look at that because we always have people say, well, what about this? Well, if you read in the Old Testament under the code, and I call it a code, it's the Torah code, you'll find a lot of laws there that would indicate, when you read between the lines, there's a lot of laws there, is that it was not a commune everywhere in the land of Israel. People had their own things, their own oxen, their own homes, their own this and that. In fact, one of the good examples, if you borrow something of your neighbors and you break it, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to pay it back. So this is the premise that not everyone shares everything. And there's lots of other the whole Jubilee cycle, the way the land reverts back, and all. There's just so many indications that it was not a commune, and this is not God's idea of a society. He wants people that are industrious, are willing to work and provide for themselves. This is the way God wants his people to operate. And so this is how we're trying to operate. We're trying not to be a burden on anyone, any family. We need to provide for our own. Paul talks about this as well. This is the verse that a lot of people bring up to say, hey, well, what about this? Nor was there anyone among them who lacked, for all who had possessions of lands, of houses, sold them, and brought the proceeds of the things that were sold and laid them at the apostles' feet. And they distributed to each as anyone had need. Let's get the picture of this. Context is everything. This is at a time when there was great persecution in the land of Israel. People were put out of the synagogue, they lost their jobs, they lost their homes. Oh, you believe in Yeshua? You're out of here. You're out of my house. You can't rent this house anymore, and so on. This was a crisis time in the church when there was great persecution, and it said the disciples dispersed throughout all the world. And that's why we had this. This was an emergency situation. We don't have that today. We're in a time period of relative peace where you can go and make a living and so on. This is what people should be doing. They should be gathering. This is a time of gathering, not a time of taking, but a time of gathering, preparing for this time, because this time that we see in Acts chapter 4 is coming upon us. There will be a time when there will be great persecution. We read the verse where the mark of the beast, people will lose their jobs and so on. This is the time that we're preparing for. And it's not the time where I don't know where you live, but we're not looking currently for dependents at the camp. This is not the time for that. The day will come where people will have to flee. Pray that your flight be not in the last moment. There will be people that wait till the last moment. And hopefully there will be a place for them to come. But what they need to realize is if they haven't made any effort, they may end up sleeping in a cave like Lot. You remember Lot's story? He left at the last moment before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it says he found a cave to sleep in. Well, that's why we should plan to leave before the cave experience, because that's not what we want. What Camp to Mead is not. Camp to Mead is not running a multi-million-dollar industry with hundreds of employees. We are a ministry. End of story. That's what we are. Our main focus is ministry. Therefore, people that would decide to come to the camp where we are, if someone chose to ask us if they could come, they would have to be 100%. No, that's not 99. I didn't say 99%. I said 100% in support of the ministry. That's just as simple as it gets. If they're not in support of the ministry, they're not going to know why we're doing what we're doing. They're not going to have an understanding of the things that we believe and so on. They have to support the ministry, number one. If they are not in support of the ministry, it's just not going to work. They will not be happy with some of the things. So this is of utmost importance. Let me give you another example. The owner of the property, when we had been working, he hadn't been up for a long time. And he came up to the property and he says, "Oh, I just want to see where you guys sacrifice your lambs." And I knew full well that if he saw a place where we were sacrificing lambs, that would have been the day that we got our eviction notice. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. There are people today that would be very happy if there was an altar at the property and they were able to sacrifice lambs on certain days, whatever day they deemed necessary. But we here at Camp to Mead, we don't do that. We believe that that ended at the time that Yeshua was the ultimate sacrifice. And the reason why I say this is if you don't have agreement on huge issues, and believe me, this is a huge issue. If you don't have agreement on some of these huge issues, it will not work. So for those people that are thinking of going anywhere, to any camp, you make sure you do some homework and some serious homework on the people where you're going to, because you need to believe in what they're doing. And if you get there and 3 weeks later and you say, "I didn't know you guys believe this," you need to search out where you're going and find out whether you can live with the things that the people believe. And those people that are running those places, they need to get to know you as well. So there's a time where you each need to get to know each other instead of just coming with all your possessions and dropping them on the place. Who knows, within 2 weeks you could be the worst enemies. Just because people keep Torah, that's a really wide spectrum. Some people that I know that keep Torah, I would not trust them. Not with my life, not with my wife, not with my kids, not with my truck, not with my gun, not with anything. So this is what I'm saying. Just because someone keeps Torah, just because I keep Torah, doesn't mean that you might keep Torah and you might say, "Oh, you might meet me in 2 weeks and say, I don't want any part of this guy." So Torah is not a reason to go anywhere. Claiming to have wilderness living figured out. We don't claim that. We're learning. The members of our community is required to use their own skills, their assets to set up their own ark of safety. Although our neighbors often share their ideas and wisdom, it is not a requirement that we all work together to build each other's ark. In other words, when someone comes it's their responsibility to take care of themselves. If we can help, if we can lend a hand or whatever, we can do that. But you can't expect others to do the preparation that you should be doing. I'm just warning you, your expectations of others has to be realistic. Realistic. We live in a generation of entitlement, but it is wrong. It is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. Although your neighbors often share their ideas and wisdom, it is not a requirement that we all work together to build each other's arcs. A prison. It's not a prison. Camp to Me is a community in which once part of the community, if at any time your vision changes, or if any time you feel that the community is not fit for you, then you are free to leave at any time if that is your desire. And we encourage people to pray earnestly as to whether any community is a fit for them. They need a conviction by the Holy Spirit before they go anywhere. What it's not a snowbird vacation destination. In our case, you come up here in the summertime up to Canada because it's really nice where we are. You come down to Arizona in the summer. It's just a vacation resort. You just travel back and forth. That is not what this is. Again, it's a ministry. And those that come to the camp are involved in the ministry. It's not a place to hide. Covered that pretty well. Social assistance. It's not a place where we've invited anyone that doesn't have a place to live or doesn't have any money. We are not in the position to take care of that. We are trying to build up a place where when everything hits the fan, it will be not only safe for our families, but for those that are caught out for whatever reason, may be able to have a place of safety. We are not in the position, we do not have people that have real deep pockets, and we're welcoming, going downtown and anyone on social assistance, come on up here. That is not what this is about. Camp to Meet is not in a position to provide support to our residents. So there again, even the residents that live there, in fact, the reverse is true. We can only accommodate residents who are willing and able to provide for themselves, as well as support building up the camp. So we're not in a position, we haven't got advertisements in the papers or the Torah papers. We're looking for 5 carpenters this week, and we're going to pay X amount of dollars. We neither have food nor lodging. Anyone staying in the lodging, we ask to contribute because there's fuel costs, there's upkeep costs, there's all kinds of costs. So this is what we're doing. What it is not a place to only focus on building your own ark of safety in addition to providing for your own needs and maintaining our own residents. Every resident of the Camp to Meet age 12 and up agrees to provide a minimum of 8 hours a week of physical labor designated to provide for the needs and maintenance of the camp and the ministry. That just kind of goes without saying. So we don't have people that are hired to upkeep the camp, so we all as residents have to do that. So we designate a little bit of time, 8 hours a week, whether that's 2 hours one day, 4 hours another day, and so on. It's just the reason why I'm telling you this is if you're thinking of an end times community or a community, you need to think of these things. How are you going to structure it? Have you got somebody that's just going to bankroll you $10 million and you can hire all the people to get the work done? We are not in that position. We're more of a practical grassroots sort of position. So this is how we're structuring it. So here I'm just giving you some ideas. I'm not saying this is the way you need to do it. Giving you some information freely so that you can learn from what we have found seems to be working. What Camp to Meet is not is a free vacation rental facility. Maintenance, infrastructure, and upkeep required volunteer men, hours, and costs. Therefore, anyone wishing to visit Camp to Meet will be required to pay a rental fee. So this is what we have. Sometime during the year, we have hunters come up, and they rent the cabins. Other times, other people rent the cabins and come. And that goes to help us do upkeeps and improvement. You have made it plain what Camp to Mead does not do. Tell me what it will do. Here's what I think it will do. The answer is that it will do what it is commissioned to do. What is it commissioned to do? We've covered that. Go and teach all nations. First and foremost, Camp to Mead is a ministry. It's a ministry. It's not to be confused with a worldly housing development. We have prayed that our Heavenly Father desires to only send people here because they are in one accord and of one mind and one heart with our mission. Here again, wherever you go, make sure you're of the same mindset. Find out what the belief system is, because if with people that have different belief system, it's going to be far more of a challenge. They will have a willing heart to work side by side with us. What it is a ministry that knows that God's people need to leave the city sooner than later, i.e. now. So that's what we believe. That's why we're doing what we're doing. It's a place where at some point in the near future, it will be no longer safe to leave. So now it's safe to leave the cities, but there will be a time when I believe that living at Camp to Mead, it will be no longer safe to leave Camp to Mead to go into the cities. So these are the things that we believe here at the camp, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. Camp to Mead is a wilderness experience away from the cities where we can hear the voice of God, refine our character, walk in daily repentance, and seek to do His will always. So this is the high ideal, the high goal that we have here, to walk in repentance. A place to inspire others to prepare spiritually and deepening our personal relationship with Yeshua and His Word. So how do we do that? We do that in the Sabbath. We do that in the daily. Sometimes we'll meet together at the daily times, the morning and evening time of prayer. We'll meet at the Sabbaths. We'll meet at the feast, and this is a time of encouragement and sharing with each other and helping people grow in their experience with Yeshua and His Word. A ministry teaching and encouraging others to be physically prepared by healthful living and being self-sustainable through the soon coming Great Tribulation. That's a lot in there, a lot packed in there. So we're teaching people how to be healthy. You want to get your bodies in good shape, build up your immune system, learn what foods are good, and so on, and get ready. Ephesians. I would just want to finish up with Ephesians. I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling by which you were called, in all lowliness and gentleness, with long-suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. So here again, these words need to be digested and meditated upon before you want to be part of a community. There is one body, one Spirit, just as you were called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. So this here, it says it's not about you. This is what we need to understand when we come into community living. It's not about you. It's about outside of you. But to each of us, grace was given according to the measure of Yeshua's gift. Therefore, he says, when he ascended on high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts to men. Now this, he ascended, what does it mean? But that he first descended in the lower parts of the earth. He who descended is also the one who ascended far above all heavens, that he might fill all things. He himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, teachers, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. Here at the camp, we are part of the body of Yeshua. But some of the gifts are dispersed in that part of the body. It's very, very important for those that come to the camp or go anywhere is recognize that there is a structure. It's not a free-for-all. It's not like back in the Old Testament where the exclamation was to people that didn't go very well, all the people are holy, every one of them. Well, we saw what happened at the end of that story. The idea is there's always going to be a hierarchy in the household of faith. Even at the camp, we have a hierarchy also everywhere that there's a structure, it's a hierarchy. It's just the way it goes. So if you're being part of a camp or a group of people, recognize the hierarchy and be willing to submit to the leadership of the hierarchy. If you cannot do that, I highly recommend that you do not go there. It's going to be problems on both sides. Till we all come to the unity of faith of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man. This is where we're being called to go, to the measure of stature of the fullness of Yeshua. Our focus here at the camp, one of the main focuses is we're being reproduced into the image of God. What he lost at the beginning through the fall, he's regaining through the last work of reformation. This is what we're striving to become, like Yeshua. And that's what we try to encourage each other to do. So that we should be no longer children tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men in the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting. I don't know about you, but I'm hearing every wind of doctrine out there. This has got to go. We've got to come to grips with all these different teachings and come to agreement. This is why there's only one faith, and we should be all coming down to the same one. Goes on, but speaking the truth in love may grow up in all things into him who is the head, Yeshua, from whom the whole body joined and knit together. This is his body now. This is us. We're joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the effective working by which every part does its share. I want to read that again. That every part does its share. So the structure of a camp or an end times ministry is every part, every person, everybody at the camp is going to be able to do its share. You just got to figure out what that is. But nobody's just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Everyone is doing their share. And what does that do? It causes things to grow. And that's what we want to do, both spiritually and physically. How do you do this? Pray about your flight from the city. You need to pray that prayer. Why? Why do you need to go? When do you need to go? Where do you need to go? How are you going to go? And who are you going to go with? These are all things that you want to pray about. And in my experience, you are going to get an answer to that prayer. Just pray it. Follow Yah's lead as he opens the door. Wait for a door to open. Don't push open doors. You'll find yourself in a time of trouble before you need to be in a time of trouble. Mission statement. Make sure that you have some kind of, in your own mind, what you want to do as a mission statement. Wherever you go, make sure that mission statement is in harmony with what you would like to be a part of. Constitution. We have a constitution. The American people have a constitution. We, the people, we have a constitution as well as at the camp. Everyone that lives at the camp has to abide by that constitution without exceptions. Yahweh's law, of course, his law is first and foremost. Everything that we've tried to include in the Constitution is based on his law. Appointed times, the other thing is you want to be a part of a community that keeps the appointed time that you're okay with. I understand there's lots of different appointed times, but if you're going to keep the Sabbath on a certain day, it's best that you keep the Sabbath on a certain day with those of like mind. In other words, we can't have Wednesday and Thursday Sabbaths and Sabbaths. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So the timing of even the festivals, if you believe it's on a certain time and a camp keeps a certain time, don't expect them to change because of what you believe. You may be able to share that with them, give them the reasons, but don't expect you're going to change the system in which they're doing. My own personal belief is as long as we keep going in the right direction, this whole thing about the timing is going to be sorted out. Just stay faithful. Lone Rangers, we live up in the wild, wild west. And what we tell the Lone Rangers when they ride into the camp, just keep riding. Just keep riding. Ours is not the only camp or not the only wilderness setting. Both in all of the North America, there's lots of real estate out there. Those people that come in and want everyone to change and do it the way they do it, they should have their own camp. And that's what we recommend. That's very, very important. Tells us here, in that day he was on the housetop and his goods are in the house. Let him not come down to take them away. And likewise, the one who is in the field, let him not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. There's a time coming when we will have to leave and we will not be able to go back. I highly recommend you make your decision to get out of town before the last moment in time. I want to thank you, and I want to end there. I want to thank you for listening. It looks like we got some questions. So lots of questions. Oh my. Okay. Let's see what we can do. Is there still time to prepare, sell a home, and move? How will you pay property taxes? Okay, we got, I don't know, this is all just running. Okay, 2 questions. Is there still time to prepare? Absolutely, there's still time to prepare. What I'm going to say is there's no time to lose. There's absolutely no time to lose. You see, Yeshua told Daniel himself, Daniel, seal up the book until the time of the end. And that time, it'll be understood. That's what he said. We're starting to understand the books of Daniel and Revelation. That means we've arrived at the time of the end. That tells us that the 3.5 years, the 1290, the 1335 are still ahead. I do not believe those have started. We have a little bit of time before that time. That's the window of opportunity that we see ourselves in today. No, it is not too late to prepare. You need to get your feet moving in the right direction now. Sell your home. I'm not going to tell you when to sell your home. You need to pray about this. But you want to sell your home. I will say this. You want to sell your home when the property values are up here, not when they're down here. That's not when you want to sell it. So you want to pick a time in the market where it's a good market. I wouldn't go and put a real estate sign on your home today, but I do believe we're going to recover from this little downturn in the economy, and that would be the time that I would be wanting to sell my home. There will be a time when the war hits, as we were talking about earlier, where the economy will just go down and it will not recover. And that at that time, it'll be too late to sell your home. You won't be able to sell it at any price. So you do want to consider that very, very important, because you're going to want to use any equity to purchase and do some building up of where you're going to go. How will you pay property taxes? Great question. I have that in my mind as well. Property taxes, if we're reading the book of Revelation correctly, there is going to be so much strife on the earth that collecting a few property taxes will not be a prime target. They're going to have way too many problems to worry about that. Now, as it is today, I don't know what it's so much like in the States, but generally you've got 2 or 3 years before they actually demand that you turn your property over. So, granted, at some point, you will probably either lose your property or they will come and take it from you because you will be deemed a criminal of the state. But there will be a time where you will be able to be safe where you are. If you're downtown, paying taxes will be a completely different matter. But being out in a rural area where the taxes aren't that much anyways, and the problems that they're going to have in the cities, I do not believe it will be a challenge. And there's lots of other questions. Why would we go prepare? They can find you on radar or whatever. Everything's going to change. There's so many things that are going to happen that the world is not going to be the same as it is today. They will not be able to find you as easily as they can today when everything lets loose. Okay, next question. I would love to visit Camp Tamid. Is that possible? Yes, it's very possible to visit Camp Tamid for whatever reason. But one thing we stress, make sure you get a hold of us before you come. Just don't drop in. Number one, I might not be there. Somebody else might not be there to greet you. We do have a gate, and it is locked. So, and for many other reasons, there's a principle that I like to go to, And it's a divine principle. Yeshua says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens the door and allows me to come in, I will eat with him. That's a divine principle. So that to me is a principle of etiquette. It would be proper etiquette if you're going to visit anyone to let them know you're on your way. This is really all we ask, is that you would get a hold of us. And we don't mind visitors. We just like to know when they're coming and what their purpose is, of course, as well. You mean Camp to Meet is a prototype, not a place of refuge for all. Okay, a prototype. Okay, if I think I'm following you correctly, it's not the real deal. It's just what the real deal looks like. No, we believe Camp to Meet is the real deal, but there's a progression. There is a means to an end. We're trying to build up. We're trying to make what would you call it? A type of what people are going to need. Now, the structure is going to be different. You can have different structures. You may have different regulations and so on. We've got a regulation that turns people off right away. One of our regulations is, number one, none of the residents can smoke, and none of the residents can consume alcohol. That's in our Constitution. And you know, that's amazing, because a lot of people say, well, I could never go there. Well, if you actually believed you're living in the end time and you can't give up your cigarettes and you can't give up your alcohol because you're so addicted to them, you really need to take a think on things and figure out what's the most important in your life. And so we have made that regulation because myself personally, I've seen the heartache that alcohol can cause, the death and destruction. It has changed so much in the last 20, 30, 40 years. When you consider almost half of the car accidents that happen are alcohol or drug related, pretty soon you start to process this and you just think, you know what, this is just not a good thing. Some people can handle it, some people can't handle it, and we've made the decision that for the sake of those that can't, those that can't will abstain, and that's one of our regulations. This is something that another camp might not have a problem with, and that's if that's the way. And that's why I say make sure you understand what the regulations are when people come. So Camp to Meet is a prototype. It's something that we have done, that we think we've set up, and it's a guide. It is not the only way, and we are not saying it's the only way by any means. It's a type of something, and all we're trying to do is just share what we've done to encourage other people to do that as well, so that these cities of refuge will be all over. Not a place of refuge for all. In the time of the end, when the mark of the beast is in the land, we believe that this will be a safe haven for those that are making a decision whether they're going to worship God or be a part of the beast system. That has not happened yet. We're working towards that place as we speak. What natural resources should land have? Great question. You need to stay warm. So if you're living in an area where you need wood for heat or coal or whatever, you need to stay warm. So it needs to have a heat source. If you're living in the south, in the tropics, not a problem. So you need that. You need water. You need fresh water. You need water that you can eat or drink, and you need water that you can bathe. So you need enough water to be able to do that. We have sand and gravel, which is great for building, making concrete. We also have trees and a little sawmill. We can cut some trees and stuff for that. So those are the main things. You need food, so you need land that can grow food. So you need food and shelter and warmth. Those are the main things that you need. And for those that want to hang around, what I think I'm going to do is after the question period, I'm just going to show you some more pictures. If you've got to run, that's no problem. I don't want to take up your afternoon, but I do have a few more pictures that will help us with some of these questions as well. Do you know any in Ontario? it's possible. I'm in contact with some people in Ontario, but I don't know. I know they're working towards something. What about in the U.S.? Yes, I know a number of people that are working on these things in the U.S. People are thinking about it. There again, need to contact people. If you don't know anyone, maybe a good thing is to go on websites of ministries. And I know a lot of the main ministries now are getting in contact with people to try and do things like this. Permission to mention them. Yes, I would need permission to mention anyone. Oh, Shofar Mountain gave me permission to mention them. Okay, good. Yes, I was introduced to him down in Arkansas. That's great. He gave us permission so they can go on the website. It's Shofar Mountain, I believe. Okay, thank you for that. That's a place in Arkansas in the Ozarks. And yeah, wonderful. If you can't buy or sell, how will you have internet or phone? Great question. There will be a time when everything's going to be shut down. We won't be able to have internet or phone. But when that happens, that happens. There's nothing we can do about that. Whether you're in the city or in the country, that is going to be the same thing that happens to it. You won't be able to buy or sell. Comment, the Lord protects his people. Worry not about food, clothes, or shelter. Not even death can separate us from him. You're absolutely right. Would you have said this to Noah? And how would he have responded? Noah, why are you wasting your time building this ark? Noah, why are you putting all that food in the ark? Don't you know God is going to take care of you? There's always been times in the plan of salvation where people had to make special preparation. I'm going to cite another one. How about Joseph? Joseph, you got 7 years of plenty. You got 7 years of famine coming. What are you going to do about it? The Pharaoh put a man in charge that knew what he was doing, inspired by the Holy One himself to make provision. I wonder if somebody would have said to Joseph, Joseph, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be just fine. He may have had something to say about it. In this time, I'm not taking the authority of Joseph or Noah, but I believe he's told us about the things that are coming so that we can prepare for this time in Earth's history, just as Noah prepared, just as Joseph prepared, and so on. We're at a pinnacle point, as it were, in this age. So that's how I would answer that question. I am a single woman. What can I do? What if I have an unbelieving spouse who won't come? Oh, okay. 2 questions. I'm a single woman. What do I do? Well, it's like I said, whether you're single, everyone can do something. Right now, if you're thinking about this, you need to start praying about it. You need to start figuring out what you can do. Whether you're single or whether you're married, there's always something that can be done. Work towards the end of getting out of the city, and our Father will open a door. I know he will. And we're not opposed. If you want to write in and ask us some of these questions, we can get a little more on a personal level, where maybe we can give you some counsel or guidance if we can. Certainly in this kind of an atmosphere, it's pretty hard to get into the nitty-gritty. But what I can say for sure is God has a plan for you wherever you are. You are not in a hopeless situation. And that leads me to the next question. What if I have an unbelieving spouse who won't come with me? You need to get to the end of that road, but you don't go anywhere. You don't leave until you know for sure you have to go. Now, let's just look at the time of Lot, because we're told as in Lot's position. I've done a lot of studying on trying to figure out what was going on with Lot. We know a little bit of the story, but Lot, it says he was a righteous man. He went into Sodom. Abraham chose not to. He wanted to live near Sodom. Pretty soon he found himself in Sodom where he shouldn't have been, and then he was caught. His wife looked back. In other words, his wife did not want to leave. She had family in the city and so on. Lot did not look back. He was not tied to the city, and so on. So the end of Lot's story isn't great because he waited till the last minute. Whatever we do, we don't want to wait till the last minute. If you are alone in this, stay in contact with people that are on this wavelength, that have this mindset. Keep connected to those people. That's the very least you want to do. What about relying on rainwater collection? Whatever you have to do, there's a lot of places that collect it off the roof and so on. You're going to have to filter it, but if you have a means to filter it, that's great. If you get in an area where they get enough rainwater, that's the other thing. Do you get enough rainwater depending on where you are? Water is extremely important. If you don't get enough water to survive, you don't want to be there. That is the critical. There's a reason why Yeshua calls him the water of life, calls himself the water of life. Without water, there is no life. And it's a perfect parallel for him. How cold and how much snow do you get at Camp Tamid? Well, they got about 4 feet of snow this year. And it gets down to about 30 Celsius. If you have a phone, you can calculate what that is. Pardon me? Minus 30 Celsius. Yeah, that's pretty cold. Somebody, maybe you could punch that in on a calculator. We can tell them what that is in Fahrenheit. But that's cold. So it gets cold. So you have to be ready for that. You have to have warm clothes, get some firewood. This is why you have to figure out where you're going to be. Will prairies be safer during plagues and destruction? Prairies. Are you talking Alberta, Saskatchewan, North Dakota, South Dakota, that? You know, for me personally, I like trees. I like forest. I love it where we're at. The wind doesn't blow through and howl, and you don't get the big drifts as you do in the prairies and so on. And you get the windbreaks with the trees and such. I love the wilderness setting. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I know people in the prairies that are doing the same thing that we're doing, live out in the country and so on, that are preparing their place for what's coming. Do people at the camp have to be vegetarians? Can they drink, smoke, or use marijuana? Oh, well, I thought I did cover it. That must have come in earlier. That's fine. Yes, so we have decided at our camp that alcohol as a beverage, now that doesn't, when we talk about tinctures and things like that, this is a whole different animal as far as that goes. But as a beverage, we have said no. It's kind of like a camp, a dry camp, if you will, if you want to call it that. If you go away to work, there's reasons why there's dry camps, and we have adopted those same reasons. It's just better overall. It eliminates a lot of those problems. Being a vegetarian, no, not everyone at Camp Tamid is a vegetarian. We highly recommend it. We believe it's God's original plan. We would believe that we're reverting back to it. We're going back to the garden. We would encourage it. We believe that it's a healthier way to go. But no, I would be, it would kind of be presumptuous to say that everyone needs to be a vegetarian. God allowed it under the circumstances after the flood. 15 years, I will add that, 1,500 years after creation, God's people were allowed to eat meat. We see that after the flood. That tells me before the flood they didn't for that long. So obviously God had a plan. However, all flesh had corrupted its way. Under certain conditions, it was allowed and so on. The people got used to it. In fact, they craved it in the wilderness. We could talk about that for a few minutes, but I won't bother. They craved it in the wilderness, and we know what happened there as well. So yeah, I wouldn't say that everyone needs to be a vegetarian. However, when it comes to Passover and the feasts, we don't sacrifice animals so that we can eat them at the festivals. This is something that we feel very strongly about. So in that sense, it's a little different. They drink, or or use marijuana. Now, the use of marijuana for pleasure it's been legalized. What do they call it? The recreational use. Same with drinking alcohol. We classify that in the same category as well. The jury is still out on the medical marijuana. They're still a little bit confused on that issue. That will be decided here probably fairly soon. But as a recreation, that would be a no on that one. They call it impaired for a reason, and we believe it impairs your judgment. And if there was ever a time in Earth's history, is we need all of our faculties, and these things we know, whether it's alcohol or marijuana, they do destroy brain cells. I don't know about you, but I need everyone I can get. They're dying quicker than I'd like. So with that, I think we've covered most everything. If you've got more questions, if you want to hang around, I know we've kept you a long time. I would really like to rifle through a few pictures. If you want to go, if you want to hang around and see some pictures, I'm just going to give you a little slideshow. I'm going to go through a few of these texts quickly here. Our Father's resources. You know, people that come up here, they bring their tools and so on. They have lots of resources. But our Father's greatest resources, and this is what we need to understand, his greatest resource is people. Everyone gets treated like a king and a queen. We're accountable to each other. We're trying to build each other up. We're trying to do our Father's work. The greatest resource at any camp or any community should be the people. People need to be treated with respect, every one of them.
It's interesting because one of our local families here wanted to know if there's any kind of a system to deal with conflict. What happens when there's conflict at the community?
Right. When there's, what do we do if there's conflict at the community? I can guarantee you there we don't all think alike. We all came from different backgrounds. What's right for somebody, maybe not right for somebody else. So what you have to do with conflict is we just have to do what Yeshua said. And if you have an issue with a brother, you need to deal with it. And so this is where the sanctification, the part about, getting rid of those things that aren't good, is you're held to account far more than you would be anywhere else just living out on your own. So you're accountable to your neighbors, and you need to do what's right. And if there is an issue, obviously you have to work it out. It's just that simple.
How do we make an income at Camp to me?
How do we make an income at Camp to me? You keep giving me questions. I'm trying to show pictures right now. No, questions are great. I don't mind them, but I want to be able to let people go. But questions: how do we make an income at Camp to Mead? Some of the families there are making plans to create an income, so there'll be some people are going to have web things that they can make an income off, different things they can sell, or so on. One of the fellows at the camp builds furniture. He sells furniture, the rustic style stuff, really cool stuff. And one of the fellows is a carpenter. He works off the site. Two of them do that too as well. And my son-in-law, he works off-site as well. So we don't have employment per se at this camp because we don't have that person that's funded us and said, here's a few $1,000,000, get all this stuff done. We're not in a position to do that. So the people at our camp have to supply for their own needs and gardens and things like that, but we're not in a position to give people food and lodging and all of this kind of thing. So there's leadership at the camp, there's helpers, assistants to those leadership, there's people in training. I just want to go to that one for a second. Myself being the leader at the camp, or the one that has the highest position, if you want to call it that. I don't call it that. That's the guy at the leader is the one that serves. That's his job. But there's always that hierarchy, and I don't want to miss that. Is you're always going to have a leader and somebody that's in that position that's sort of carrying out these things. You've got people that are coming up that are younger, that are in training. What I want to do as a leader, I want to have people that will take my position. This body isn't going to run forever, and I want to be able to make sure that the ministry keeps going when I don't. Perfect place to raise a family. It's just gorgeous, crystal clear waters. You can see this place where we can help each other. This is my residence when I'm at the camp. That's a dark black attic. We totally renovated it, and now it's a nice little one. This cabin here is where my daughter lives. That's being renovated as we speak. This is my grandson. You can see in his hand what he's got is a little tiny, tiny frog. Good place for kids to run around and have some good, clean fun. This is a sawmill we got up and running. Had some fun with that this year. It's good to have that, and this could be turned into some kind of way to make income as well. We're not at that point yet. Oh, I have something going on here. So there we go. That's just when we got it running to give it a try. And this is our first board that we pulled off of there. We're pretty happy about that. And it's our first stack of wood. So what do we do with that? There's nothing better to cut a tree down, take it down to the sawmill, cut it up, and then build something. This is a woodshed that we built. There's just a good feeling that your Father is providing for your needs. This is one of the families. This is Seb and Tasha and their clan. And this is where they live. They've done a total renovation on this cabin, just beautiful. This is their garden. They're using the Back to Eden garden method. And that doesn't look like much then, but just a few months later, that's what it looked like. What do you think of that? Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah, took a lesson from them, and that's what they did. This is our little, at Sukkot, we built a little shelter there, and some of the kids having some fun at one of the feasts that we had. And I think that might even be an adult up there. Oh, no, maybe not. Yeah, the adults aren't allowed to have fun up at the camp. This is just one of the cabins, and let's go that way. This is one of the rivers close to the cabin. One of the fellows was out doing a little bit of fishing one day, and this was a double rainbow that my daughter took. Just couldn't help but see the promise in the rainbow. This is our boiler. You can see right through the woodshed. Our big boiler there, it heats 2 cabins, the whole wash house, about 2,500 square feet there in the concrete, and also the main worship hall. That boiler does all of that. It's just it goes through a little bit of wood, but it's pretty efficient. So we have wood that we get every year. So you have to have a means to heating, and that's what we do. We all go out and get. This is one of the cabins. This is my daughter and 2 grandkids, and they're little flock. Do you call it a flock of chickens? What do they call that? We'll call it a flock of chickens. So they have chickens, get their own eggs off the chickens and so on. This is just a nighttime, beautiful night out there. And somebody asked about the winter. This is a wintertime picture. Gorgeous out there. You'll see some snowmobile tracks there, I think. But we have a few snowmobiles up there, add a little bit more fun, make the winter a little more enjoyable. This is just one of the cabins that we fixed up this year. We had a couple young a brother and sister come up from Indiana, and they gave us some help this summer, and we were able to do some chores. This is my puppy dog. It's being taken care of by my daughter and her husband. This is just a picture of the camp in the summer, just a gorgeous day up this, just give you an idea what it looks like. These are a couple of cabins in the woods. There's about 12 of these cabins interspersed amongst the trees. This is my granddaughter. She likes to come for a ride with her grandfather, that's myself, in the tractor when we're doing things, so she really likes to do that. And it's fun to have her join me. And she's got there, I don't know if you can see what's in her hands. I should really blow that up. That's a whole bunch of worms that she got. And she was just really proud of all those worms. She wanted to show me. Just a beautiful bunch of worms, isn't it? This is a lake above the place we hiked up. It's about a 6-kilometer walk. just gorgeous out there. And on the right hand side is the group that we went up with, and we had a good day of hiking. Here's a picture of my wife and Leanne. I won't say your last name, Leanne. You might be watching. She's always a little nervous of being caught in the pictures, but they're in the raspberry patch. This is a raspberry patch that has their tame plants. They're, what do you call them, domestic. But there's a crop of them just up the road behind our place, and it's just a beautiful patch of raspberries. Here again, some pictures of the meadow out the back when we're putting on the roof on the cabin. And there's the garden area, big garden area there. Just a little bit of work here in the renovation. This is after the washing with the fire hose type of thing, pressure wash, putting a new floor in, new fireplace and so on, new roof going on here. We put styrofoam on the roofs and then tin for much safer because it's all wood heat. And here again, this is just to show you you're going to have to get dirty. You're going to have some work to do. It's not just a matter of sitting around. This is a very busy beehive of activity at the camp. So if you want to come up for a visit, don't expect you're going to catch me sitting down for a week. You're going to have to chase me around to talk to me at the camp because I have 1,000 jobs that I need to do once I get up there in a couple weeks. So if you come up for a visit, you're more than welcome to come for a visit, but do bring your tools because you're going to have to follow me around and I will give you something to do. This is my son-in-law doing some spraying, pressure washing my daughter and her husband on their cabin. And the children get involved too, very important. All the kids are involved in doing the work. They all learn the responsibilities. Here they are stacking wood. And the wood stacking is getting bigger, getting more and more. That little woodshed has to be full because it has to feed that wood cook stove. It also keeps them warm. So this is how my daughter and her husband, this is how she heats her water. This is how she bakes her food. And this is how they heat their home all in one shot. I highly recommend that if you're looking into this, that you get yourself a really good wood cook stove that's airtight, will heat your home, and you'll be able to cook on it as well. Very, very important. You don't want to have one of those older styles, if you can help it, that aren't airtight. They use lots of wood. You don't want to have two of these things going in your house at one time. Here's a picture of the field. We're doing a little tilling there. You need a piece of equipment to do this. Here we're doing some fencing. We have deer and elk on the property, so we have to put in fencing, a high enough fence so they can't get in. And here's that garden. We've got about an acre of land gardened off with fencing all around. This is more of the community or the larger garden. We're talking about possibly doing garlic, things of herbs that we can market and so on as a way of income. And this is Seb and his family. They were out for a ride one day. This is the home that he was renovating. And this is his little guy that's playing in nature. It's just a beautiful place out in nature where you're in tune with our Father. Somehow getting out of the concrete jungles brings you into more of a communion with Him. And it's a good place for kids to learn some really wholesome things. Here again, everyone's involved. This is Seb and Tasha's son. He's just done some baking. And I don't know what it is, but every time I go by that house, when I stop, there's always fresh baking, which is really nice. I just love it. Wild herbs. This is one of the daughters, Holly, who's studying herbology. I'm not sure exactly what that's called, but she's studying about the medicinal things. There's lots of things in nature. This is something that we really want to put forward to people. Is we're coming into a time where it won't be safe to go to the hospitals. In fact, you'll get sick if you go to the hospital. So you want to do everything you can to stay away from the larger centers and have these herbs that will keep you healthy, build your immune system, and so on. So this is something that we have going on as well. Very important. And even the little ones are put to work. Do you see what she's carrying there? She has set the mole traps. She's ready to go. And she's got action, because you got to keep these little guys under control. And they learn right when they're small is these guys eat things that we want to eat, so we got to get rid of them. And just it's really, really nice. And here's another tool that is very handy if you do the back to Eden method of gardening, which I highly recommend. Once we put that on our small apple trees that we planted, we didn't have to water after that. It holds the moisture in the ground. It works very well. So this is something you can do. So when you cut trees down for lumber or whatever, you can chip the branches. Not much actually goes to waste. So it's a way to use all the things that we have. This is Tasha and 3 young ladies. She's teaching them a little bit about gardening, having a little instruction there in the middle of the garden. This is what happens is we all learn, and everyone's eager to do their part. This is just showing one of our greatest natural resources, the water. Here again comes off the mountains, and it's just crystal clear. We just drink right out of this. And here's a shot of the meadow. This is all bottom land, about 50, 60 acres of bottom land that we can grow pretty much anything we can, depending on the season that we have. We're in a colder area, so obviously we're not going to grow watermelons and cantaloupes and things like that, but we can with greenhousing, so that'll help there. And this is a picture which we're putting a greenhouse structure up, setting this up for, this will be probably covered this year. We have the structure there now. And this is our snow removal. This is another thing, just showing again, depending on where you're going to live, you're going to have the equipment that it takes to get rid of the snow. Here we get snow every couple days. We could get 4 or 6 inches a foot overnight. So we've got to have a way to get that off the road, and that's going to be very important. You need something dependable to be able to do that. Here again, this is just another garden fencing. You're going to have to put fencing up. And this is my 2 grandkids, my daughter out there working in the garden. They're all getting their hands dirty. Here again, the kids are involved. Everyone's involved. And I think we might be running out of pictures because I'm getting some doubles. This is just some sawmill experiencing, being proud of our lumber that we're cutting. And here's just some working on a cabin. This is the young fella working and splitting some wood. And I believe that's Bree. Is that Bree there? I think it is. So this is a 13-year-old gal that has enough responsibility that she's working the splitter, a piece of equipment that needs to be used carefully. And here again, just doing some more work. And that's all the slides I have. So we've gone a little overtime, but you've stuck with me. And those that didn't can come back and watch the rest of it when they get some time. So I want to thank you for coming by. And here again, I want to emphasize that whatever community you are going to be a part of, make sure you have the same mindset of the people that are at that community. If you do not, it's not going to work very well. So just it's so, so important. I know at first you just want to be a part of something, but do your homework. Both parties, those that live there and you all need to get along and be happy with the agreement. So it's just so vitally important. I want to thank you again. Keep moving forward and pray that your flight is not at the last moment in time. I believe our Father will let you know when it's time to go. But now's the time to put your nose to the grindstone, do what you can, and make that provision. Start getting your mindset in order, start getting things in order, and our Father will prepare a way. So let's close with prayer, and I'll let you go. Father in heaven, we thank you again for the Sabbath. And Father, I thank you for your knowledge, your wisdom, and that you have all knowledge of future, and you have given it to us so that we can prepare. And I ask, Father, that you be with each person that has been viewing this presentation. Put it on their heart what they should do in preparation for your coming. in the time of trouble. We ask these things in Yeshua's name. Amen. Thank you, and we'll talk to you later.